Guys, Indy here, trying to record a little video here on my lunch break. I tried recording outside, but wow, it was bright. Maybe my eyes are getting a little worse and I can't take the bright light. I don't know. It just didn't seem to ever darken enough for me. And so I'm actually sitting here inside in kind of a public area. So people are walking by as I'm recording, which is kind of different and odd for me. And you might hear some vacuuming in the background. I just saw a 6 foot by 4 foot window get dropped and explode. So that was interesting. But you're not here for this topic. So on Saturday, and today is Monday, so 2 days ago, we got together, me and 4 players, and had a session 0, made up our characters and backgrounds for Dragon Age. So this is my first attempt at running Dragon Age. The plan is just to run a couple of the free modules out there. The one that's in the back of the book. I think I have the special book where it's hardback and the players and the GM's book is together in one binding. So there's 3 adventures in the back and 1 intended for beginner levels. So running that one and the one that's in the Dragon Age Quick Starter Guide that's available for free download from freeronin.com. So 4 players got together and we made our characters. I wanted them to have actual bonds together. That was one thing that I wanted to push and do differently this time than in a lot of my games. I wanted them to not just be independent mercenaries all hired from the same guy, because the intention is to do more than one story. So what's the reason for them being together for the second job as well? Actually, only the Quick Starter Guide is an actual merc job, like where they're hired. The second one is them all walking together and coming across, or maybe not together, but just coincidentally coming across the same scene and feeling the need to be involved. So I wanted them to come together and actually have a reason. So I tried to start them off and for them to have a reason for being together first, but they decided that they'd have an easier time developing that if they actually developed their characters first. So fine, we did that. So, we rolled stats, and that was fun. A couple people were really unhappy with their stats, and I said, well, you can re-roll, and they started to re-roll the stat that they were unhappy with. And I was like, no, I mean re-roll the whole thing. Throw the whole thing away. And they're like, oh, and I was like, I don't care which one you take. You don't have to take the second one. They're like, oh, okay, good. So they felt like they had a safety net there, so they picked the second, they went ahead and rolled whole new characters. And then both of them kept the new character, if I remember right. I might be remembering wrong. And so we have 4 PCs. We ended up with a Dalish elf rogue and a city elf rogue. And they didn't actually start together knowing each other, which I thought was interesting. We had an Ander survivor warrior and a human circle mage. So of the players, one was Mrs. Indy, and she's done a decent amount of role-playing. And our tenant, who has only recently gotten into role-playing. One of our friends, she has role-played twice, once in a one-shot run by myself in Marvel, TSR's Marvel, and once in a one-shot run by Mrs. Indy, which was Numenera. And then we had one person from work. He had never role-played at all before, but I felt like these 4 would get along well and do storytelling well together. And it was actually he who thought of how kind of started the story that got them together, where as a city elf, he stole something from the Ander survivor while he was in the town, or whichever city. We didn't bother marking which one. They don't know the setting well enough for it to really matter. And I don't really think it matters either. The Ander survivor chases him out as he's running out into the forest. He comes across a campsite where the Dalish elf is set up by herself and just kind of tosses the throwing axe. He'd stolen a throwing axe, tosses the throwing axe to her and just keeps running by. And the Ander survivor didn't get a good enough sight of who stole from her, So the only male in the party, PC-wise and player-wise, is the city elf, and accuses the Ander survivor accuses the Dalish elf of stealing the weapon, and then I had I don't know what they're called. I forgot what they're called. A Bronto or something like that. It's basically some kind of like large rhinoceros, sometimes domesticated beast, comes rampaging through, and they end up having to save each other, kind of thing, and that forms a bond, and blah blah blah. Actually, my intent is not really to talk about the story behind the characters, but they got a story together, and that was interesting, and they all made brought the characters first level, and then I suggested, or I offered, if you'd like, and we can do more storytelling, maybe some more roles, and develop an actual mission or story that you went off and did. And if you do that, I'll allow you to just level up now, and you'll be level 2. So that's what they chose. One player unfortunately couldn't quite make it all the way to the end of that time of our play time. She had to get back to the husband and the kids. It went well. That was the first time I did a lot of, and how does that look? And what does that look like for you? And what does this mean? I gave the players a lot of, not world building, because Dragon Age is set in a world, but I gave them a lot of opportunities to decide how these things got put together. And, and I asked them questions, hey, City Elf, how do you feel about this Dalish Elf? How do you feel about a mage being involved in this? Or whatever. Things like this. So I think that went well for me as a first time kind of running a game with a lot more questions. We didn't actually run Dragon Age, but it was actually a lot more similar to one of the heavier narratives games, right? Not that I was satisfied with that. I mean, I'm not saying I'm I've been turned on by heavy narrative games. I'm just saying it was fine for background building and just starting people off. Tomorrow night, Tuesday night, we're actually getting together for the first game session, where we'll run the story in the free PDF from Ronan. Everyone seems to like their characters, but they were thrown off by the requirements for some of the focuses. Sorry, not the focuses, the talents. Needing Dex 2 or Dex 3 or Perception 2 to get some of them. That threw some of them off because they were really wanting a particular vision for their character, and then they couldn't quite fill it because their starting stats weren't high enough. But there was also some confusion in there. Our tenant had downloaded a PDF of the rules, but it seems like that was a playtest version of the rules, so not everything was updated. So for her, scouting required some kind of focus for perception or dexterity, I can't remember, and she didn't have it, so she couldn't take it. And then I mentioned something about Dex 2 requirement for scouting, and she said, she was like, what? And I think, yeah, in my book it says Dex 2. And, that must have been something that was updated. I can take it then. Do you mind if I replace this other talent that I had chosen? No problem. Go ahead and replace it. And that was actually after the session. So, good. Yeah, it was pleasing. We had I threw a few gen locks at them, and we kind of rolled the first round of combat to get an idea of how to do it and how serious or lethal damage was. They seemed to half killed the gen locks and only take a quarter damage in the meantime. Now, granted, that's a quarter damage in one round, right? So they were going to be fairly beaten up, even just surviving that. But this has gone on way long enough. I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't have a script for this. That's probably why. So it was fun. It was really just character development, character creation, and crafting some story to bind them together and to give them some kind of background. The Dalish elf actually has a really good reason, a really good campaign hook actually for why she would leave her caravan, and I'm almost kind of sad that we're just gonna be running these two games. We might be able to run more, but we can't run a whole lot because our tenant is leaving at the end of the summer. She's just in town for an internship with the zoo. So, I mean, there's no way that this can run a long term. But it's kind of too bad that I'm going to try to figure out how to work her plot into the adventures that we've chosen to run, and maybe even have, maybe we'll go ahead and resolve it in the last one. I don't know. I'll have to figure out how it goes in there. I don't want to shoehorn it in too hard. It's going to feel really weird. So when I made them, I gave them a really good moral choice, and it wasn't planned in their little, as we were telling the story that's going to take them from first level to second level, I gave them a really hard choice between turning someone in for a bounty or sparing them because of their love. Somebody with a lot of love who only broke the law because of their deep love for someone, kind of thing. I didn't clue them into that at first, and I didn't even have it planned, really. I just kind of thought of it on the fly. So they really liked that. So we'll see. This is 12 minutes, and that's way too long. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you did, keep a comment if you have experience with Dragon Age or the Fantasy Age system, and I will give you guys an update about how the first actual playing session goes. Bye!